NASCAR comes out with a ton of new rule changes for 2023, including getting rid of stage cautions at road courses, and Ross Chastain's Melon back at Martinsville in the fall is no longer allowed, and Amazon potentially going to buy the rights to NASCAR coverage in the future. Let's talk about it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host, Alex Lambert, and let's talk about some very important NASCAR rule changes heading into the 2023 NASCAR season. I want to talk a little bit about this. Amazon trying to get some of the TV rights for 2025 in NASCAR. I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the show, but I really want to focus on the big rule changes we have heading into 2023. Just a few days away. You know, the season starts on Sunday with the Clash. We have less than 3 weeks now to the Daytona 500, the start of the regular season. We have a lot of action to talk about in NASCAR, but we had a ton of NASCAR rules released yesterday. Let's try to get into all of them. Obviously, one of the big ones, one of the main ones is going to be Ross Chastain's Melon last year at Martinsville in the fall will no longer be allowed. And for some fans, that's unfortunate. I'm going to talk about why I think that is the right move to make. You know, last year when that happened, I was fortunate enough to say that I was in the grandstands for that race. It was incredible. It was amazing. The fans loved it. It was a super exciting moment. I mean, the fans went crazy. It was an exciting moment. It was really an incredible thing to do, and it was a really smart thing to do. Ross Chastain needed a couple of points, decided to make that move, got in with that move, and it went viral. It was one of the most watched things NASCAR has ever had on social media. Millions, hundreds of millions of people around the world saw that move. Everybody around the sports world was talking about that. I remember watching Sunday Night Football, and they had that on Sunday Night Football. They were showing that. It made SportsCenter's top 10. It was number 1 on their top 10 list for moves for the week. That was absolutely exciting. But Adam Stern did report that NASCAR has banned the viral wall ride move by Ross Chastain. That was released yesterday afternoon. So that's a bit unfortunate. I know that when we look at this from a fan perspective, sometimes we're like, well, that's a bummer. That was such an incredible move. But if we look at it from a logical standpoint, if we put ourselves in NASCAR's shoes, I think you have to make this rule. I don't think we need to go to Martinsville in April. We go back to Martinsville in April, and I don't think you could do this at any other racetrack. But when we go back to Martinsville in April, I don't think we all want to be coming to the final lap of that race thinking, okay, is somebody going to try to pull off this wall ride move and gain position at the end, or try to win the race. If you're second or third, to try to win the race with the wall ride move. If you're the leader of the race, do you go up to the wall to play defense? You don't want to lose the race like that. A whole lot of questions start circulating surrounding this wall ride moment. And with this next-gen car, and it looks to be very possible. I know he did it just right, but with this next-gen car, it's probably going to be possible to redo. I think it's good for NASCAR to go ahead and say, hey, we don't want any of that going into Martinsville this year, or any racetrack for that matter, if you wanted to try it. I'm not sure where else you could try it. Maybe a Bristol, possibly a Richmond. I know Larson's tried it at Darlington, didn't quite work out. But I think NASCAR was in the right to ban this decision. It's for many reasons. It's a safety hazard for one. If you got a car going 30 or 40 miles faster on the racetrack than everybody else, like Ross Chastain did back in the fall, he could come on the front straightaway and rear end somebody. We know rear impacts can be dangerous in these next-gen cars. I know NASCAR's been working to fix that. It looks like they have made some improvements, but still a lot of unknown with that. You don't want somebody going in there and rear-ending somebody, or, somebody gets turned sideways and goes up there on top of the wall. You don't want them to get slammed in the door or anything like that with a head-on impact. That could be very dangerous, going, like I said, 20, 30, maybe even 40 miles an hour faster riding the wall. I think it's a safety hazard for one. And like I said, that's not a... Like I said, the safety hazard is obviously the most important thing, but also, does it really take a whole lot of talent to go up there and ride the wall? I don't think so. Does it take a lot of talent to get around Martinsville and take the lead at Martinsville? Yes, 100%. But if you just ride the wall, I'm not saying what Ross Chastain did wasn't impressive. I'm not saying it wasn't extremely smart, but did it take a lot of talent? I really don't think so. And we don't want, drivers or teams gaining position or winning races off of something that doesn't require talent. So I think it would look it would really look sloppy. It would look kind of embarrassing if we had a whole bunch of drivers trying to do it on the final lap of a Martinsville race coming up this year, or at any racetrack for that matter. I don't think that would be a very good look for NASCAR if we saw every driver doing it. And if you think about it, that could be a possibility. Every driver's trying to, scratch and claw for everything they can get to win a championship, make the playoffs, and that could have been an option if NASCAR hadn't have put that rule in place. So I think it was the right call for NASCAR to make, and I don't disagree with them making this call at all. There's a whole lot more rules that NASCAR released. There's 4 more that they released on their Twitter page. One of those is obviously no cautions for stage breaks, the detached wheel penalty. They've updated that. Rain tires for oval tracks, and then, of course, a new points format for the playoffs this year. Let's try to break down each of those. I'll try to do the best job I can at breaking each of those down in somewhat timely manner because we got a whole, like I said, all these rules kind of came at us yesterday afternoon, hit us like a ton of bricks, but let's try to talk about them. One that I really like, and I've said this a lot in the past, I remember saying it after a Michigan race, after a couple of wrecks, after stage cautions last year, is I think NASCAR should get rid of the stage cautions, keep the stage points and all that. Well, they have not done that completely, but they have somewhat... that has now got its foot in the door. They put their foot in the door for that idea. No caution stage breaks for NASCAR at the road courses in the Cup Series. The Xfinity and trucks will still have road course cautions, but the Cup Series will not. So kind of exploring this, stage breaks with no caution. It's never been happened. NASCAR implemented stage breaks in 2017. There's been a caution after every stage break since, but now they're experimenting with, maybe keeping the race going. It should be pretty cool to see. They wave the green and white checkered flag. Award the stage points, award the top 10 points, and the race keeps on going. And I really like that decision. I think, for one, that ramps up the intensity. You can't beat and bang come into a stage win. You got to take care of your stuff still. You're not going to get that break. But most importantly, especially at the road courses, it rewards who it should reward. With 3 laps to go or 2 laps to go, the leader of a road course race at any road course track really had to go down pit road and give up those stage points, give up those stage wins to have a shot to win the race. If you won the first or second stage at a road course race, there was a very minimum chance that you were going to win the race. And a lot of times the drivers that won those stage points were, maybe not the best car of the day, or really shouldn't have deserved to get those stage points. The whole reason we put these stage points in place was to say, hey, if you're dominating a race and something goes wrong at the end, at least you got a little something out of the day. And we know how important these stage points are. These aren't things we should be giving away whatsoever. How many times have we come down to a playoff cutoff race or a race to make the playoffs and it comes down to 1 point, comes down to a tiebreaker, 2-3 points? Those stage points are very important. That's nothing we need to be giving out whatsoever or kind of just throwing out there. It needs to be treated seriously, and I think with getting rid of these stage cautions, that kind of puts more relevance into those stage points. That's a lot of stage points. We're talking about 6 road course races. That's a lot of stage points to be, won or lost, and I think it's very important that we have a relevant system for those. So I'm glad NASCAR decided to make this decision. Hopefully, for at least in my opinion, I hope in the future they decide to get rid of the stage cautions around the entire NASCAR Cup Series at every racetrack, NASCAR Xfinity and trucks. That's just my opinion, but we'll see what happens. Kind of edging on into that for 2023. It should be interesting to see. We'll see how that goes for this upcoming season. Another big one is the detached wheel penalty update. So previously, if you had a wheel fall off on pit road or on the racetrack, it was a 4-week suspension for the crew chief and one other team member, and that was really it. No big penalty for that specific race. Obviously, you don't want to lose the crew chief because, that can be big, especially depending on what time of the season it is. You don't want to lose a crew chief. But I really like this penalty. I think this really makes the team say, hey, if you lose a wheel now, good chances it's going to be really difficult to win or compete for a race. So here's the rule. If you lose a wheel on pit road, if the wheel falls off on pit road, you will serve a pass-through penalty. If it's under green flag conditions, if it's under a caution, obviously you'll just go to the tail end of the longest line. So kind of like the same thing as a pit road speeding penalty is essentially what it'll be if you lose that wheel on pit road. Now, if you lose it on the racetrack, it's going to be an even bigger penalty. It'll be a 2-lap penalty and a 2-race suspension for 2 pit crew members, which can be very serious. Obviously, the 2-lap penalty is a big one. That essentially takes you out of the race for the win. It'll be very difficult to win a race if you lose that wheel, and I think that's important. Losing wheels, having these tires rolling around on the racetrack is a serious safety concern, not only for the other drivers, not only for the teams in the infield, but for the fans. A car could hit that wheel, and that thing could go flying up in the air. There's no telling where it could land. I think it needed to be treated very seriously. I've said this a few times. We had a lot of wheels fall off at the beginning of last year. It still continued over into the second half of the year, way more than it needed to be. And I'm glad NASCAR decided to act on it because this is going to basically say, hey, if you want a shot to win this race, you're going to need to make sure those wheels stay on. And maybe those teams will look at that in practice a little bit more and say, hey, we got to keep these tires on because we're essentially out of the race if we lose this tire on the racetrack, and it's really going to hurt if we lose it on pit road as well. So I love this rule decision. Really all about safety here when you talk about wheels coming off on the racetrack. That can be a serious safety hazard, and I'm glad NASCAR is deciding to take action. I think the teams will take this more seriously than the 4-week, crew chief suspension. The 4-week crew chief suspension was big too, but I think this is bigger because this takes you out of contention for a race win, and it could be in a big race, like I said, playoffs and stuff like that. You don't want to be 2 laps down, so that's very important. Another thing, rain tires. We did hear about rain tires coming into the NASCAR Cup Series. There will be wet tires available for damp conditions on select ovals. So what I understand from this rule sounds like is that NASCAR will allow you to bring wet tires to a select amount of racetracks. Obviously, that's the LA Coliseum. Don't think we'll have to worry about rain there. Martinsville, North Wilkesboro, New Hampshire, Phoenix, Richmond. Those will be the Cup tracks, and then Milwaukee and Indianapolis Raceway Park for some of the lower series. I think that's going to be very interesting as well. The wet tires, damp conditions at select ovals. So what that sounds like to me is that they won't be running these oval rain races in the rain. They'll be on maybe a wet surface with no rain. I know that's what happened last year at Watkins Glen, so I think that's a good idea. I think that should be cool to see. We have never seen NASCAR on wet conditions at an oval. It's very possible that we could see it here in 2023. One more change that NASCAR announced this season, this upcoming season, is the points requirement for playoff eligibility has been completely removed. It used to be you could win a race, you get into the playoffs, but there was a catch. If you won a race and you were not in the top 30 in points, you did not make the playoffs. I don't think we ever saw that in the, 8-9 years now we've had the playoffs. I don't think we've ever seen a driver win a race and not make the playoffs because they weren't in the top 30 in points. I know Chris Buescher back in 2016 was really close to that. There were some talks about if Corey LaJoie could win a plate race last year that he wouldn't be in, or he would be on the bubble of being in the top 30 in points. So I don't really think this is a huge one. Don't really think it changes a whole lot. I don't think we'll see a big difference. Maybe one driver could get a lucky win or some sort of I don't like to say lucky, but maybe a fluky type win or something really goes correct for him and maybe catches a couple of breaks and is able to get a win. But I don't really see anybody who's not top 30 in points getting wins unless something crazy happens. And then if it does happen, it'd probably be just one driver. So I'm not too against this rule. I don't think I would have changed it if it was just up to me, but definitely not against it. It's interesting to see if we'll see this come into play at some point in the future. But like I said, nobody who's been outside the top 30 in points has ever won a race, I don't think, since the playoff era has begun. I could be wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong, but I don't think so, thinking off the top of my head. So those are the rule changes going into the 2023 NASCAR season. There is one more thing I want to talk about before I leave the show. It was actually 2 days ago, back on January 30th, that Adam Stern reported that NASCAR's new TV deal negotiations are completely underway. Obviously, Fox, NBC Sports are well into that negotiation. They host own the TV contracts now. Fox hosts the first half of the season. NBC hosts the second half of the season. But Amazon is reportedly trying to get in there as a streaming service, as a third partner for the next TV deal. And I'm not totally against it. I'm not going to say I'm, completely for streaming services in NASCAR, especially for the NASCAR Cup Series. But I think it could open the door up to something new. There's a lot of subscribers to Amazon Prime. Amazon does a great job at advertising things to their subscribers. So it could help NASCAR in a way, at least branch out to younger fans. I'm not sure if the older fan base would want to pay for a streaming service, but it definitely should be interesting to see. But I am a fan of having three partners, having three broadcast partners. I guess I'm just kind of nostalgic for the TNT summer days. Maybe Amazon could have the summer portion of the schedule before NBC, after Fox. Just something interesting to see. We'll see what happens with that. Obviously, like I said, 2025, still a little bit of ways away, but this contract expires in 2024. Although Adam Stern does report that this deal could be signed and we could know about it by the fall of this season. So that's definitely interesting. Shouldn't be a whole lot longer. A year from now, there's a good chance we'll know who those TV partners will be. That's it. That's really all there is to talk about. A jam-packed episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked it, obviously like and subscribe to the channel and like the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. That's really all there is to talk about. And of course, let's get rowdy.